Noah Schwartz, who I periodically coach, asks, it seems like every time I watch a top 8 Fox match, they miss a ledge dash or otherwise SD a stock. Do you think Marth players benefit from some of the easier punishes and execution, especially over the long course term? Do you think fatigue plays a role in top finishes? It's funny because if you read this question and you didn't know who Noah was, you would assume he must be a Spacies player. He's not. He's actually a Falcon player, which is really funny. Yeah, I do think fatigue really does play a role in top finishes. I really do. I think a big part of why Mango underperformed at specifically Genesis was fatigue. I mean, you could see it on his face. That being said, I don't necessarily think things like Fox's, I don't think this is the best example of fatigue. And the reason I say that is twofold. One, top 8 usually isn't on the same day at super majors as the rest of the tournament. And so usually your top 8 Fox players are actually pretty well rested on Sunday because it's a brand new day. And I think that Fox ledge dash is just something that people are gonna miss Fox ledge dash forever. Like, you know, that fucking ninja tweet that was like, well, why in the NFL, why don't they just find kickers that can just fucking kick? Yeah, I'll never understand how top 8 Fox players just miss ledge dashes. Well, the thing is, yeah, I mean, that'll just happen. I don't even think it's necessarily a fucking fatigue thing. I think that happens. I think it's part of the character. Everyone still remembers that one time fucking H-Box like SD'd and air dodged off the side and died at that one Genesis. Like, I still remember that because it's shocking. Like, that doesn't happen that often. Jigglypuff just doesn't SD like that often. It's very, very rare. And that's also part of the character. Like, you know, there's a million times that Mango has SD'd or any of your top Fox players have missed a ledge dash or they used to side B off the stage, right? Like, that kind of just happens. So I don't know that that's the best example of fatigue per se. Do I think fatigue matters? Yes. Do I think Marth players benefit from some of those easier punishes and execution? You know, I will say, I'm going to throw the Marth players a bone in this one. I think Marth is harder than he looks. And I don't necessarily think, you know how Leffen used to talk about how Puff is the best tournament character because of course H-Box is going to clutch box all these matches because it's easy to be clutch with Puff because, you know, you can't kill confirm Jigglypuff that easily. You know, Puff lives to these high percents and Puff can always kill you off of kind of one straight knockdown, etc., etc. Marth kind of has that. I agree in some matchups. Like, I think they're like in Spacey matchups that can definitely happen. Like, I think Kadoran versus Mango from Summit's a good example of that kind of happening where Kadoran did just kind of get his hands on Mango on the last stock and he did kind of just kill him. Like, that definitely happened. On the flip side, it doesn't always work that way for Marth because there's a lot of instances where the Marth player just has the fucking opponent at over 100%, even in the Fox matchup. Like, I would say Fox Marth, if it's last stock game 5 and they're both at 100, okay, if they're both at 0, I'm like, oh, the Marth players fucking got this. But on the flip side, if they're both at 100, I'm kind of like, oh, dude, I think the Fox players got this. Like, it's way easier for Fox to get some stray thing that leads to a kill at 100. You can just hit a Randy Nair and then just edge guard. And then you look at things like Marth Sheik. Like, if you watched Zane's matches when he lost, who did he lose to at Summit? He lost to Plup and Jama. There were a lot of instances where Zane had a lead but couldn't close out stocks because he couldn't get a clean kill confirmed. So Marth is not the best example of this just because, okay, yeah, it looks easy for Marth sometimes, and it really is. My whole thing with Marth, why I think Spacies, myself included, complain about the Marth matchup is sometimes, and I say this as someone who plays Marth as well, sometimes as Marth, when I play Marth and I'm playing Marth Spacies, I really feel like I have to drop my combo twice to drop my combo. Tell me how many times this happened. You up throw them or whatever, and you hit and you're like, okay, I guess I'll up tilt at this percent. You're like, up tilt, and then you're like, oops, I got the sour spot up tilt. Oops, I dropped my combo. Well, I guess I'll just reaction tech chase them. And so you like run over, you get the hit of the up tilt, but they like get knocked down, and then you run over, and then you get a tech chase anyway. And they buffered get up attack because they were trying to match out your chain grab, and you get the freest grab anyway. So it's like, oh, look at me, I sure did pick that one up. It's like, yeah, really worked for that. That happens a lot. That definitely happens a lot. I feel like, especially on some stages, and especially in some matchups, in particular fast followers, Marth has to drop his combo twice to actually drop his combo. Like, even when you get the wrong hitbox, and if it was another character, your combo ends. For Marth, you just get a tech chase, and then you get to grab them again. But on the flip side, with other characters, you have characters like Sheik, where if you drop your combo, they wake up, shine you, and kill you. But then on the flip side, Sheik gets to fight Marth, and then Sheik gets to be the one who's sitting at 100%, and it's like, all right, buddy, I'm gonna down throw fair you if I get a grab, and if you get a grab, you get to up throw me into hopefully reading my drift and my double jump and my air dodge. So good luck, right? Like, so I think there's this balance. And this is why I'm a big fan of saying that certain matchups are hard. I'm never going to say that Marth Sheik is definitively winning for Sheik, but I feel like there's circumstances in the matchup that are way easier for one character than the other. And when you account for sweaty, clutch box, game 5 last hit situations, yeah, naturally those are going to favor some characters over others depending on the matchup. It's not always Marth though, is I guess what I'm trying to say. Literally, if I go Zane, Plub, or Zane Jmook, let's pull up Zane Jmook from fucking Smash Summit. Like Zane was, there was one of these games where Zane was just cleanly up like the whole time. And then Jmook just like brought it back because Zane couldn't get a fucking kill. Maybe it was this one. Maybe it was like, okay, Zane's got this, and then he just like couldn't fucking kill him. I would just rather fucking be Sheik here for the reason that, yeah, at 100, you can kill Marth with the grab and you get down throw forwarder into a pretty flowcharty edge guard. For Marth, it's kind of a bummer sometimes. Like if you don't get the clean openings, and this situation kind of sucks, like just having to recover against this and having to come off the ledge, Jmook not giving him anything, he gets the shitty tournament winner jump, and it's pretty much over. So anyway, the answer is yes, but it's complicated. And then Ginger asks, an all-knowing, all-powerful being visits you and has a question for you. If you answer the question incorrectly, they will end your life. If you answer correctly, you can live the rest of your life out as usual. They ask, who is the best character in Melee? Who do you choose? And they're all-knowing, which means they know the correct answer. This person, L Monkey Martin, says, I would have to know his definition of best, because saying most optimal pick for beating any opponent with human capacity is different than, for example, most effective character for winning tournaments under the current rule set, or a character that solves the game in tasks. To which Ginger responds, you're scaring the hose. Unfortunately, this would be my answer or something similar to this, but okay, if I literally had to pick, and Ginger, I'm sorry. I know you want me to say Falco because it's what you believe, but at the end of the day, it's Fox. And I know there's been some questions about like, could it be Marth? And I will say, I do think Marth beats Fox. Not by much, but like, I don't know. I think that happens where you have like the best character in the game or in any given game doesn't have to be the character with no bad match, or like with literally no losing matchups. Like that happens sometimes, like Brawl Meta Knight, but that doesn't always happen. It's not always the case that the best character in the game has no bad matchups. Smash Ultimate's a really good example of this. I think there's definitely no characters with no losing matchups. I'm just gonna say Fox. I think he's got the best matchup spread. I think even Fox Marth isn't that bad. I would, at the end of the day, probably, especially if we're talking about fucking like perfect, everyone's playing good, and we're talking about the best character. This is an all-powerful being, so this is probably an all-powerful being who's playing other all-powerful beings in Melee. Like, he's trying to know how he can win his tournament of all-powerful beings who are playing Melee at the highest level. I do feel like at that level, I feel like Fox does just fine against Marth. I do. I think that Fox is hard to play against Marth, but I think that, I don't know, I don't think Fox Marth is as bad as some of the naysayers are going to have you believe. Armada and Mango both say that Fox beats Marth. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. Let's put it that way. I ultimately think that it is impossible to play defense in Melee such that you can cover, like, offense in Melee is so versatile and so fluid and so like varied and flexible. There's so many ways to approach. There's so many ways you can mix up your drift, so many ways you can jump. You can't cover every approach. If anything, I would say recent developments in the meta, I would say actually hurt Marth. What I mean by that is I think that people are going to continue to get better at using crouch cancel to beat Marth's down tilt. I think people are going to get better at spacing around Marth's aerials so that Marth gets weak hits that can get crouch cancel punished. There's a lot of new stuff that makes life actually more difficult for Marth rather than the other way around. So I feel pretty comfortable saying Fox is the best character, but I would not say that he is the only character who is in the S tier. So there you go. I also think that to this day, a lot of Foxes do not do everything they can to edgeguard Marth. I think that the edgeguard from Fox against Marth can actually be pushed in a lot of ways. I think that there is basically no Fox that has the perfect spread of an edgeguard suite against Marth. There's things that Mango's doing that Cody's not doing, and there's things that Cody's doing that Mango's not doing. And I think that life will ultimately continue to get harder for Marth off stage. Side B is going to continue to get worse and worse. His up B is going to continue to be punished harder and harder. There's still very few top Foxes who are really consistently doing the ledge dash up smash punish on Marth. And just like you see Sheiks kind of just brutalize Marth off stage, I think that it's going to start looking more and more like that from the Fox perspective. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not convinced that Fox Marth couldn't get closer and closer to even. Controversial answer, I know, but that's kind of where I'm at on it. Why do some people consider space animals the best? Is the amount of options they have. This kind of segues from the last question, but it is interesting how this is worded. So one, yes. And I ultimately think that the reasons people consider Fox really strong aren't always the reasons people consider Falco strong. Because Falco, for example, doesn't run very fast. He doesn't have a good dash dance like Fox does, right? He doesn't have a good throw game like Fox does, per se. He kind of does, but it's, it's different. His combo game is very unique compared to the top tiers, but he has the laser. He has, even though it's a good thing in some ways that Fox's punish game comes from the grab, because you can kind of simplify the game to, well, I'm just going to grab my opponent and then kind of go from there. Falco doesn't have that, but on the flip side, a lot of Falco's hits turn into huge damage, and he can pressure the shit out of your shield in a way that where other characters, when they pressure their shield, they're really trying to bait out a response that they can punish. Falco, same with Fox. By the way, that's a little bit of a misconception. Fox has that same problem, because if I'm multi-shining your shield and one of those multi-shines turns into a hit, well, Fox, usually you just slide to the ledge, or, I'm probably committed to doing my next move in my shield pressure. I'm not going to be able to turn that into a combo. Falco can kind of pressure your shield pretty safely and pretty effectively and just kind of see any of those shines hit and turn it into a death, right? Like, that's really, really, really strong, and that's something that, like, Falco uniquely has. But I think that, like, ultimately, and this is something I kind of have been meaning to talk about, was like, okay, so you remember Laud wrote that twit longer about Peach and about Fox players who have protagonist syndrome. Okay, so there's this, it's funny because you can be right about something and wrong about something at the same time. And what do I mean by that? So I think a lot of Spacies players enter tournament, they lose to something or someone or what have you. They say to themselves, well, I would have won that if I just played good. I played bad and I missed my execution or whatever. Maybe I SD'd and I lost because I didn't execute as well as I'm used to playing. I remember a time where I played really good and I was hitting the cleanest ledge dashes. And if I could have played like that in tournament, I would have. And this is wrong from an improvement standpoint, because from an improvement standpoint, you can't just go home and your only takeaway is, I just need to play better. Like, that's not helpful. That's not a helpful framework for improvement. On the flip side, a lot of the time they're actually probably fucking right. If they just didn't SD that one crucial stock, or if they just hit that clean punish on Peach spamming down smash on their shield, maybe this is a mid-level Fox player and they're playing a mid-level Peach player, and this Peach player is spamming fucking down smash, and the Fox player goes for wave dash out of shield to punish down smash on shield, doesn't get the perfect timing, wave dashes into another down smash, is holding down because they're going for a wave shine, gets down smash for 70% into an edge guard, right? Like, definitely happens to people, and it definitely is an execution test that a lot of players who are Space Animal players can pass sometimes, but didn't pass in the heat of the moment and failed and lost the tournament match and went home with the takeaway that, yes, they would have won if they just played better. Now, they're wrong from an improvement standpoint because it's not a good long-term perspective to have. But at the same time, I do think this happens to everybody. And I think that it is very easy as a Space Animal player to think of anecdotes where correctly you have assessed that you would have won if you just played better. And I think because there are so many Space Animal players, I think they're just fun characters. People like to play. People like to play Fox. People like to play Falco because they're fun, they're fast. Everyone knows that their peak is up here, wherever this is in the grand scheme of things. And their valleys are probably down here. When you're a Fox player, especially a low-level, mid-level Fox player, your ceilings are probably a lot higher than your floors. And so they remember their ceilings. And so they develop what Laud calls protagonist syndrome. Now, whether that's a fair thing to call it is up for debate, but I think that rightfully so, and wrongfully, I think a lot of Space Animal players develop this sense of like, shit, I could have just played better and I would have won. And yeah, the sad thing is they're probably right. That kind of experience, that kind of anecdotal framework will naturally lead people to believe that Space Animal's best. And you don't even just see this from the Spacey players. You see this from the floaties as well. You know, I see so many Peach players and Puff players who say things like, you got to realize that at the end of the day, if you just didn't miss any of your tech skill and you just laser camped me, I wouldn't even be able to touch you. I see a lot of Peach players and floaty players saying stuff like this. So, you know, you Spacey players, you don't know how good you have it. You know, ultimately we have to cheese you because if you played perfect, we can't do anything about it. I see that opinion parroted pretty often as well. So I think that, yeah, it just kind of is this feedback loop of experiences that both the fast faller players and the floaty players are having that ultimately are kind of leading a lot of people to think that Space Animals sort of rule the meta. And I think that's kind of a healthy thing. I think that it's good when the hard characters are the best. I think that the most boring, stale metagames that fighting games can have are when the simple, easy characters are the best characters in the game and the hard characters aren't rewarding because you can't even win even when you are playing perfect. And this, I think, happens in a lot of modern fighting games. Big part of the reason I don't like Smash Ultimate online, especially online. Why would you even put time into it when you're just going to lose to somebody who picks a zoner and like kind of effortlessly rolls around and shoots B moves at you? You look at fucking Guilty Gear Strive, like why would anyone play fucking Testament when Ramlethal exists? Why would anyone play like Jack O, for example? Like there's top tiers like fucking Nago, Happy Chaos, Ram, Leo for sure, right? If you want to mix people, like, why do you need to go through all that work learning your Jacko setups when you just pick Leo and fucking roll your face on the stick, right? And I'm saying this as a Ram player. I think it's good that space animals are what they are, which is high execution, high reward characters. Because the alternative is, like, if they were weak, you end up in this situation where, like, there's just no reason to pick characters that are actually fast and have execution floors, because there's no real reason to. You just pick the character where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. I think this is why Melee's in a good spot. I really do. So yeah, it is for better and also for worse. I think that there's a good reason that Melee has made it as long as it has. I mean, imagine if literally the two best characters in the game were Peach and Puff. Peach Puff is fun every now and again. When fucking HBox plays Laud at Genesis and he puts on his fucking $1,000 sunglasses and he's fucking bobbing his head to Kanye and it's a spectacle and people are memeing about it, yeah, it's fun. But when you have to watch Peach Puff 15 times every Super Major because they're the best characters in the game, and it's not HBox versus Laud, it's fucking Joe Schmo Peach versus Joe Schmo Puff, and it's like every other. If you had to watch Peach Puff as often as you had to watch Fox Falco, that shit would get old. That shit would get fucking old. I don't think I'd be able to do it. I would probably not be a Melee commentator. You know, when I see those cursed graphics that come out of no shade against the Pacific Northwest, but it's always like fucking, you know, to be like top 8 results. First place, we got Bladewise at Peach. Second place, we got Aura as Peach. Third place and fourth place, we got Chango and Vino. They're playing Jigglypuff. If that was Super Majors, I probably wouldn't commentate this game anymore. No shade against Peach and Puff players. I think you guys are important for the variance in the game, and I think you hope to bring people in. But I think that there's a good spread right now. I think it's a good thing that most people, or more people, I should say, play fast fallers. You can just say you hate it. I don't, but that's the thing, right? Because if there were no floaty players, like, I think it's important that people have the ability to come into Melee because they're attracted to those sorts of characters. But I also think it's important that it's not every fucking matchup. And I think Melee works out that the right types of people gravitate to floaties and play floaties. But I think it's only the case because of the respective power levels of the different characters in the game. And I think it's probably pretty fucking bad if either floaties are unplayable or fast followers are unplayable. But I will say it's probably worse if fast followers are unplayable for that reason. I can get through a tournament just fine if it's all Fox and Falco. I probably can't get through a tournament if it's literally all Puff versus Peach, just because there'd be a lot of timeouts, right? And it would just take a long time. That's kind of where I'm at on. I think where we're at is good, and there's a reason that people see space animals in the light that they do. And I don't think it's a bad thing. History has vindicated Melee in that Melee has lived as long as it has. And so if it ain't broke, don't fix it.